I Wear My Sunglasses at Night. Written by Paul Aster Cohen. Narrated by Nicky. Chapter 15. Nicky didn't need to follow very close. She could see them from miles away. They were heading back to the neighborhoods they had passed through earlier that day, but this time the raging fires were closer. Everything was washed in a red tint from the flames quickly drawing close. Earlier, Nicky had mentioned to Shecky that's where she thought they were headed, but deep down something told her she was certain. There was a lot she felt she knew about them. Being this close to her tribe was like a receiver getting closer to the signal. Echoing in her head, she could hear murmurs, ideas, thoughts, but as one large conversation, like bees buzzing in a hive almost. The Toyota turned down an alley, and Nicky put it in park. She was close enough. Shecky knew too, as he growled and scratched at the door. They got out, and she opened the trunk and pulled out a pile of stakes strapped together with her favorite leather belt. Leaping over fences and over bushes, they made their way through backyards to the houses she knew they would be at. She crept down a driveway and peered around the corner of a house. Nicky looked down the winding street that made its way through the suburban neighborhood and saw that they were scattered around. Emergency vehicles parked in front of various houses. They were hunting, feeding, and her stomach cramped at the thought of food, of blood. "Here goes nothing," she told the coyote and sighed, making her way across the front lawn to the first house with a vehicle in front of it. She slid out one of the stakes from the bunch and stepped onto the porch. She saw the front door was slightly open, so she stopped to listen inside. Shecky's ears perked up as his eyes looked in through the cracked door. Nothing. She cautiously pushed open the door with the stake, and Shecky crept in, sniffing the ground inside. He looked up at Nicky, then nodded his head towards the upstairs. She slowly stepped inside and heard some voices coming from above. She saw the carpeted stairs leading to the voices and slowly walked towards them. "What the hell?" a man's voice said, coming from the kitchen. Both Nicky and the coyote jumped. Before she could turn around, a woman from down the hall she hadn't seen kicked her in the chest, sending her clear across the house, through a few walls, and she landed in the living room, sliding across the floor before slamming against a couch. The coyote lunged at the girl but quickly found himself being tossed out of the nearby sliding glass door into the pool. The girl crushed the sunglasses under her boot as she headed to the other end of the house. Nicky shook off the plaster and tried to get to her feet, but the girl was already on her. Grabbing her by her hair, she slammed her into the brick fireplace, which burst into rubble. Nicky barely managed to duck a raging fist, which turned the few bricks left into dust. She rolled far enough away to gather herself, but the girl was already coming for more. Nicky blocked another kick, another punch, then another kick, before finding herself backed up against a wall. She threw a fist, but the girl dodged it with blurring speed, grabbed her head hard, and smashed her through that wall, sending her tumbling into the kitchen head over feet. "Holy shit!" Nicky huffed, spitting out blood and debris. She barely saw the boot coming at her face, but wasn't fast enough to move. When her eyes opened again, she found herself falling on her back. Onto the dining table, a stream of blood flowed like an open water hose from the boot to her face. The girl grabbed Nicky by her ankle before she could finish one word and swung her overhead onto the saltillo-tiled floor, sending broken chunks of red stone into the air everywhere. Nicky was bruised and battered and bleeding all over. She could barely lift her head to look up and see the girl charging at her again. "Damn it!" Shecky rushed past Nicky, holding a large shard of glass in his mouth, and sliced the girl deep in her leg, causing her to fall to one knee and slide across the tiled floor towards her. Nicky grinned a sharp, crimson grin. She flung herself over to one side and grabbed the back of the girl's head, bloody fingers digging deep into her skull, and introduced the girl to her own brand of ass-whooping. Nicky repeatedly smashed the girl's face into the thick tile, causing a deep spiderweb pattern on the ground. She used all of her strength to get up and swung a leg over the girl's back. She began flailing underneath as Nicky gripped both sides of her head and with a primal scream spun it all the way around, violently snapping as it did. The girl twitched and convulsed on the ground as they locked eyes. Nicky fell off of her and slid away on the floor slowly, wiping blood from her eyes. The girl scowled and tried to vomit curses at her, but her voice was trapped in twisted bone and vocal cords. She slapped one hand onto the floor, then the other. The girl wasn't done just yet and began getting up. Nicky rolled her swollen, bloodshot eyes and sighed, trying to gather enough strength to get up off the floor and stop her. Shecky trotted up to Nicky with a steak in his mouth and was met with a gracious, oozing smile. She threw herself at the girl, who was on all fours, her head still facing to the ceiling, and staked her, the wooden tip piercing all the way through her and snapping on the tile. Nicky tried to crawl away as fast as she could, but it wasn't far enough from the blast radius, so she found herself covered in the girl's innards. "Fucking gross," she panted to herself. Nicky could hear footsteps coming in from the other room as her cuts slowly closed and bones cracked back into place. "Ah, shit," she uttered from behind a busted mouth. 2 men walked in and observed the blood-covered kitchen. "Hey guys, can we just take a little time out?" She clawed at a nearby china cabinet and pulled herself up on newly fixed femurs, trying hard to steady herself. The men growled viciously behind a forest of fanged teeth. Cracking her neck, she thumbed her bleeding nose and motioned for them to come at her like a boxer unwilling to go down for the count. "Or not. Let's go, boys. You're not afraid of a girl, are you?" One of the men was suddenly in front of her, and the last thing Nicky saw before her world went dark was a fist. Nicky fell forward like a chopped tree. Timber. She awoke, chained to a chair in a basement somewhere. Through swollen eyes, she searched the room but saw no one. She tried to get up, but the chains were too tight and didn't have any give. She shook and bounced up and down, trying to get loose, but it was no use. "Poor little Nicky," a voice came from under the stairs. "I've been sitting here watching you twitch and mumble in pain as your body tries to fix itself. It's a pretty neat trick, right?" The sound of clinking high heels on concrete echoed throughout the small room. "Where's Derek?" Nicky spouted through pursed, cracked lips filled with sharp teeth. "Where is he?" The girl's face slowly came into focus as the swelling of her eyes went down. Nicky blinked uncontrollably, realizing she recognized her from somewhere. "I've seen you before," Nicky muttered, almost to herself, her brow furrowed and confused. "Once, when I met Derek at a work thing. You're that chick." "That chick?" the girl said, walking around Nicky, lightly tossing her blood-crusted blonde hair. "I'd ask Derek about that. Ask him if I'm just some chick. And did you really think you were just going to sneak up on us? I know you can sense us, so obviously we can sense you too. We're part of the same tribe now, you and I, and them. All of them," she said, motioning to the neighborhood above. Light from the opening door bathed the steps in a dull yellow glow. "Sweetie Pie, can you come down here, please?" she called up, not taking her eyes off the girl chained next to her. Nicky scoffed. "Sweetie Pie? Seriously? Listen here, Vampira." And Derek came into view at the bottom of the stairs, and they locked eyes. He was fine. Not even a scratch. She was busted and beaten, sometimes barely held together by a thread, and he was fine. She'd been through hell and back, but he looked like he walked out of a church on a breezy Sunday morning. "Nicky?" he shouted, surprised and bewildered to see her. "What the heck? What are you doing here? Are you okay?" He was about to run over to her before the hipster chick held out her arm and stopped him. "Looky, Derek, your old bitch of a girlfriend came to visit. How sweet. She can stay as long as she wants, but why don't you tell this little peach how all this came to be?" She crossed her arms and grinned a perfect, white-toothed grin. "Oh, by the way, dear, the name's Layla, not hipster chick." She backed away and motioned for Derek to speak. He looked over at Layla, then back to Nicky, inching closer. "What are you doing here? Didn't they give you the money? And the note? I figured you'd be off to the Bahamas or some shit by now." "The note? I sort of got it, but I wasn't a vampire then, so I couldn't read the damn thing." Layla rolled her eyes from the corner of the room, thinking about the morons she sent to handle the task. "Wait, what? You weren't a vampire yet? Nick, what did you do? Did you... "I made one of them bite me so I could be stronger. I came for you, Derek. I thought they took you, but now I'm just confused. What are you doing here?" Are you one of these damn things too? Derek slid his hands down his face, then placed them on his hips and began pacing back and forth as he thought of a simple explanation. Nicky, you see, He refused to look at her now reconstructed features. It's a little complicated, just a little, but I want you to know that it wasn't you. Well, it was you, but it was more me. Are you breaking up with me, Derek? Nicky asked, still confused. Yes, Derek answered, taking a deep breath, then saw anger wash over her face. I mean, no. Yes, but you see, all this wasn't supposed to happen. They were supposed to give you the money, the note, which said that I was being taken somewhere safe, and you should just go live your life, move on. I thought you were going to ask me to marry you, asshole. Derek laughed a little, then straightened himself and cleared his throat. Nicky, why would you think that? We haven't gotten along for more than a year. I fucking hate working out. I fucking hate eating organic, tasteless bullshit. I hate the movies you pick on Netflix and that low-fat popcorn. I want butter. Lots of butter. You couldn't tell that when I would say I'm going to the gym, I was actually going to In-N-Out? Look at these love handles, Nick. He grabbed fat from his sides. I didn't get this by doing an hour on the treadmill. I ate junk. A lot. And you were too busy working on yourself that you never even noticed. I noticed. Then why didn't you say something? Every time I tried to call it off, you would just get naked, like it would fix everything. It did work. Of course it did. You're hot, man. He saw Layla step forward out of the corner of his eye. But that's not the point. The point is, this wasn't working, so I found something that did. Layla grinned. We met online and she told me all about being a vampire. Slave? It's more like a servant, sort of, or like a devotee. All they have to do is human stuff, like go shopping during the day, pay the bills, lure unsuspecting people for them to feast on. That's it. The rest of the time I get to chill. You hooked up with a vampire so you could just chill all the time? Derek shrugged, then nodded in agreement. Layla also listens, he said, stepping closer to her. She's a real good listener and treats me like I'm wanted. She gets what she wants and I get what I want. And all those business trips? I'm a damn AC repairman, Nick. Why in the hell would I have to go on so many conferences and meetings out of state? You'd know if you would have asked me about them, but you made it so easy. You better hope these chains are strong, asshole. Now, Nikita, calm down, he said, shuffling backward, noticing the fires growing extremely close through the small basement window. I'm sorry this happened, but just so you know, I loved you. Until you didn't. Derek hung his head. Well, I'm sorry. I didn't want this, and I know it's partially my fault, but you're just as much to blame. Derek looked over at Layla and sighed. Goodbye, Nick, he said softly, and took off up the stairs. Nicky's eyes were tiny slits of rage as she stared at Layla. She was leaning against the wall with her arms crossed. Isn't love a futile, worthless thing? Fuck off. Why didn't you turn him? She clinked over to Nicky. Who the hell wants to be tied down for eternity? I mean, Derek's cute and all, sort of funny sometimes, smart, but that will fade, just like my feelings for him, like an old toy. We can't play with the same things forever now, can we? She patted Nicky on the head and headed towards the stairs. The fires are just down the ridge, and I heard getting burned alive really, really hurts. Good luck with that. Ta-ta. You bitch! You bitches! Derek, I hate you! Nicky twisted and yanked and tried to get free, but it was useless. She looked down at the bolts holding the steel chair to the concrete and yanked harder, but they wouldn't budge. From the top of the stairs, Layla said, And don't worry, you won't die alone. The coyote tumbled down the steps and landed with a thud at the bottom as voices laughed upstairs and the door closed. Shecky! She cried out. Shek! Are you okay, buddy? Don't you die on me, damn it! But the coyote didn't move. Please, oh please be alive. This is all my fault. I should have just let them take him. It's all my fault. She began to cry angry tears. "I'm sorry." Shecky woofed lightly, and Nicky's head shot up. "Shek!" He slowly picked up his head and looked at her, panting from a bloody mouth. "Well, it's you and me, buddy. I don't think we're getting out of this one," she said, studying the surroundings. The coyote's legs trembled as he got to all four of his paws, his eyes closing in pain with each movement. He sat on his haunches for a bit, gathered what strength he had left, then slowly limped over to Nicky and rested his head on her lap. The coyote was badly beaten. Bones were jutting out of his fur, and he was bleeding, badly. He blinked a few times, then closed his eyes, winced, and licked her cheek. Nicky smiled. He ambled around to Nicky's back and put his front paws on her shoulders and nudged her ponytail out of the way. "Shek, what are you doing?" She tried to turn and face him. "Shecky, what's going on, buddy? Shecky?" He bit her hard on the side of the neck, his teeth sinking in deep. "Yow! What are you doing?" He chewed and ripped off a chunk of meat. "Stop it! Stop it, you damned mutt! I'm not dead! I thought we were friends! Why are you trying to eat me?" Blood cascaded from her neck like a crimson river, down her back and arms, seeping underneath the chains. He carefully lowered himself and limped around in front of her. "What's wrong with you? Why did you do that?" She felt her wrists grow wet and begin to slide up and down the chains. She rolled her shoulders and wiggled around madly. With the blood acting as a lubricant against her skin, she slid out her hands from the bottom of the chains, then lifted them over her head. She was on her feet by the time the chains clanked on the concrete. "You fucking genius coyote, you," she said, burying her face in the soft fur around his neck. She hugged him and he whined a bit. "Shit, sorry, boy. You're the best." Shecky smiled a puppy's smile and laid down, pawing at his throat. "Wait, what?" He looked at her, then pawed at his throat again. "You want me to bite you?" He slowly nodded. "I guess if I need to eat something, it should be you, since you nearly gnawed my neck in half," she joked. He grinned again, placing his paw on her knee. "Okay, I'm so sorry, buddy. This is all my fault. Tell Tully I said hi. Thanks for everything." Nicky ran her hand over his head as Shecky closed his eyes.